my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation to go over today. Keep it simple and easy. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Great. All right, well, thank you for joining today. My name is Jeff Stawicki. I am the officer for HOST who is administrating the solicitation. So today you are joining the pre-proposal conference for a request for proposals for RFP number HOST 042021 for shelter operations and programs for the Department of Housing Stability HOST. For attendance purposes, please put your name, title, the company that you're representing, and your email address in the chat feature in Teams. And please note that this information will be posted on the bid site. And to do that, there's a little icon on the top that kind of looks like this here. And that's where you can put this information, and you can also post any questions that you might have. Okay. So once again, good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining today. All requests for information, clarification, or questions must be emailed to me, Jeff Stawicki, throughout this process. They will be received in accordance with the schedule of events. Responses to any written questions throughout the whole process, including anything that comes up today, will be posted on the web portal by October 14th by 5 p.m. So there's a schedule of events that include the time frame for submitting questions and for our response also. So here's my contact information, Jeff Stawicki, and there's also a link in the actual RFP to my email, so to keep it simple. Once again, questions and responses received throughout this event will be published as an addendum in the web portal Zengen. So next, I'd like to welcome all the other city participants that have been part of this process in developing the solicitation. We put in lots of time and we're very thoughtful about what the city's looking for this project. So Angie, are you on?
I am. Hi, good morning, everyone. Angie Nelson, Deputy Director of Housing Stability and Homelessness Resolution.
Thank you. Anybody want to go next?
Hi, I'm Midori, Director of Homelessness Resolution Programs over at HOST.
Good morning, I'm Rebecca Martinez, Program Administrator under the Department of Housing Stability.
Good morning, Ebony Santucci, Contracts and Performance Manager with HOST.
Good morning, Jared Powell, Director of Shelter System Operations with Housing Stability.
Good morning, Leslie Domingo, Contract Administrator with Homelessness Resolution Team.
Jillian Lubenow with the Division of Real Estate.
And Katie Spritzer, also with the Division of Real Estate.
Thanks for joining.
And John Looper with Department of Housing Stability Operations Manager.
Great.
And Kelsey Murphy, I'm with CEDA on the Data Platform Manager.
Thanks for joining, Kelsey. All right, I think that's everybody. So let's go over the schedule of events. So the RFP was released last Friday, October 1st. Today is our pre-proposal conference. Keep in mind the deadline to submit any additional questions outside this meeting today are Wednesday, October 13th by 12 p.m. And please once again note that all those questions should be directed to me via email. And then responses to any additional questions, including the questions that are asked today, will be posted to the portal on Thursday, October 14th by 5 p.m. So I'd really recommend that you monitor that if you're considering submitting a proposal, just to see if anything's been addendum changed in the actual solicitation. And then the proposal due date. Please note that this date has been revised. It was originally October 18th. And we felt like we needed to give proposers a little more time, so we added an extra week to the proposal deadline. So it's now it's now due on October 25th by 3 p.m. So that gives you a little more time. So let's just talk about the scope of work for the solicitation. So the City and County of Denver, through the Department of Housing Stability, is seeking proposals for service providers that are interested in providing managed support at city-owned and leased sites for operations and services for non-congregate shelter operations and or other innovative approaches to transitional shelter for persons experiencing homelessness. Host is seeking proposals for services at dedicated sites for shelter operations and programs. The city is also seeking proposals for entities that have documented site access to non-congregate rooms such as apartment buildings, boarding houses, and hotels, including providing shelter programs at such locations. Services may include funding for shelter operations at the city leased or anticipated properties, include support for the day-to-day hospitable functions. These common activities are listed in Section B of the solicitation. Funds supporting shelter programs in the solicitation support housing-focused services made available to individual guests of shelters. Shelter programs funding supports individualized professional services that are focused on rehousing activities for shelter guests, and these common activities are listed in Section B of the solicitation. The city is also accepting proposals for entities that have documented site access to and operational control of non-congregate rooms, such as multi-dwellings, attached or detached or attached apartments, permitted single room occupancy dwellings that accommodate group living, rooming and boarding houses, transitional housing and safe houses, motels and hotels. The city will consider proposals that offer gender-specific programming, provide services to individuals such as seniors, youth, couples, and families. Please note that additional locations may be added in 2022 and additional awards may be made as part of the solicitation. Existing property descriptions are currently listed in Section B2 of the solicitation. Minimum qualifications. Host seeks responses from service providers that meet the following minimum qualifications. Experience serving residents experiencing housing instability. Experience providing shelter operations and programs to individuals experiencing homelessness. A strong commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. Ability to collect and report outcomes and household demographic data in host Salesforce database. A strong commitment to integrating into existing service delivery systems, and participation in regular communications and coordination with other programs and services. And then finally, a strong commitment to providing language access and support to residents with limited English proficiency. RFP evaluation criteria. Performance outcomes to prior contracts with hosts will be considered in the overall rating of proposals. Application evaluation awards are also contingent upon applicants being current to the city on any loans, contractual, or tax obligations. Areas of review include agency capacity and experience, proposed services, response to city's proposed questions, the technical review of the proposal requirements, proposed outcomes, your program budget, response to the city's sample contract provisions, and other requirements that may be applicable. And then please note that there is no weight correlation to these areas for review. Contract requirements, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with these if you've contracted with the city before. So number one, you must be registered and in good standing with the Secretary of State, and that's at the Colorado Secretary of State website where you can obtain that information. There's a variety of different insurance requirements, including workers' compensation and employer's liability, commercial general liability, business auto liability, and then the cyber liability insurance. Once again, questions will be accepted until the deadline of Wednesday, October 13th by 12 p.m. And all questions and answers will be posted as an addendum at the web portal on Zengen. Submission of proposals for the solicitation must be done electronically through Zengen. And here's the link to the portal. No later than the date and time indicated on the proposed schedule of events. And once again, that due date is pushed out to October 25th. Any RFP questions should be directed to me specifically via email. All right, so at this time, we're going to open up to questions and answers. For this time remaining in the event, you may type your questions in the chat function. And once again, that's that little icon on the top. And the city will attempt to respond to them during this call, or they will be responded to in writing as part of addendum.
There are already some questions posed in the chat, so while other folks are formulating and typing their questions, we could start with the ones that were already listed. So okay. The first being Mike from Catholic Charities had asked, do we have to bid on all three properties or individual properties? And I think I can answer that one. So I would just say that you all are able to bid on whatever feels most appropriate for your agency and in your capacity in order to support spaces, right? So really hoping that we have a wealth of opportunity with these resources, and knowing that that there could potentially be other sites that could come online in 2022, as the PowerPoint pointed out. So that doesn't guarantee that if you put a bid for all three that you would get support for all three. That could mean one now, one later, some later, all of the options. Does anyone want to add to that?
I see your face there. that response may have been confusing for you. Do you have a follow-up question, Mike? Please go ahead.
Well, it is a little confusing. There are three properties listed in the RFP. In the RFP, there's some contradiction as to whether you can propose for one or for all three. But if we propose for one, what happens to the other two should they come online?
So you're right. There are kind of three paths forward in this RFP. One is to say, I'm proposing to operate and provide services at this specific location, one of the ones that the city has outlined in this proposal, because these are the three locations that we are aware of right now, that we feel, with some confidence we're moving towards being able to lease or own as the city and partner to provide services at that location. So there's three identified locations, and we're seeking proposals for services at one or all of those sites. If Catholic Charities says, hey, we want to do this as a continuum, we would propose for each site, and here's the cost for each site. Like please, feel free to do that. The next kind of level that we're seeking is, we're currently seeking for inquiries from owners of properties for the city to be able to purchase hotels and motels and utilize those as non-congregate shelter. And so someone could say, this East Denver Stability Center or this West Denver Stability Center, the facilities you outlined, that's not for us. But when you have new programs come on board or new facilities come on board, this is a non-congregate shelter program we would propose to be able to run, knowing that all the unknowns, right, about facilities yet to be identified, and that we would have to work through some of the logistics at the point of identification of those properties. The third path forward that we put into this is we know that there may be some program partners, and I'm sorry if everyone else could mute if you're not speaking. Thank you. So we know we have some program partners who already have site control or access to a non-congregate type facility. So that's where we listed out someone else owns a motel, a nonprofit partner owns a transitional housing program with non-congregate units. And they're looking for support to convert that property into using it as a non-congregate shelter. And so that's sort of the third area that we'd be seeking proposals for. If you've already got the property, but you're looking to change up the program model and provide more non-congregate shelter, then we could be supportive of that program support for someone who's applying. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit that there's the properties that the city is bringing to the table that we're seeking a partner to operate. There's the potential future properties the city would be bringing to the table that we're hoping to have sort of a queue of interested operating partners and an idea of the service model they would look to put into place. And then third, looking for those who have the facilities themselves and are looking for programmatic partnership and funding to be able to operate them as non-congregate shelter. Okay, thank you. A quick question that I saw in the chat, Jeff. Will the PowerPoint be made available to all of today's attendees as part of the follow-up?
Yeah, we'll post it to the web portal.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The question after that was, where do you see safe parking lots fitting into this RFP?
Yeah, so this RFP is really for the provision of non-congregate shelter and isn't part of a procurement for safe parking. And so I don't think we see a path through this proposal for safe parking. And for whoever asks the questions, if you have any follow-up as we provide answers, please feel free to chime in.
The following question, can we get a run rate of expenses that the city is currently paying that we could see?
Can you say more what you mean by, do you mean like a list of eligible expenses or like a budget template? What do you mean there?
So what we're looking for, I think, as providers is at the roadway specifically, expenses have been incurred for the last year for snow removal, pest control, laundry, and so forth. It'd be helpful to have an idea of what the city's been paying just to use as part of our budget template.
Okay, well, I'll probably have to take that question and get back with a formal response in the Q&A document and see what we're able to provide.
The next question, will successful bidders need to enter information into HMIS in addition to host Salesforce database?
Yes, all non-congregate shelter programs will be expected to enter client data into HMIS and then provide the quarterly reporting in host Salesforce system.
following question, is host able to provide information on current contracts for shelter operations, laundry, housekeeping to help applicants develop budgets? That feels similar to Mike's question. Is there anything else, Heather, that you wanted to know with that, or?
No, that was the same as Mike's question. Thank you.
And then what are the transportation or transfer requirements?
Kristen, can you say more about that?
Yes, I noticed in the RFP, one of the bulleted points that was, I assume, a requirement is that we need to be able to provide transfer coordination, or I don't have the exact thing in front of me. But I was just, my assumption is that that means, oh, so guest transfers. Is that like a transportation, like a transfer between like shelters? Am I reading that wrong, Angie?
Without seeing it in full context in front of me, I might have to get back to you on a response on that one.
That's, just so you know, it's under shelter operations, under the common activities list.
Gotcha. I think I'd say in general, related to transportation, our expectation is that any site that the city is bringing to the table or a provider is bringing to the table, that these would be walk-up operations, that we would not be providing for nightly, bus transport from any central spot. In a programmatic budget, provider partners are welcome to include costs associated with client transportation. Like a lot of programs would maybe include the price for bus tickets or bus passes potentially, if that's part of your program model. But overall, we're not looking to provide large scale transportation as part of this. But I'll look deeper into that language in that section and provide some clarity in the Q&A.
Thanks, Angie.
Yeah, and Midoriya, it looks like we missed a question.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
So the question is, what is the turnaround time for notifications of award?
Jeff, do you want to speak to that time frame?
Without having it in front of me, I mean, we'll put together a review committee after the due date. Typically, we give them a couple weeks to review the proposals and score them. There would be some internal discussion with whoever the awardees are, which could take a little time as far as contract negotiations. But it's my understanding that we're looking at starting these contracts, Angie, February 1st, was it? Yeah. So
yeah, that's the hope, is that at least some of the sites would be ready to start operations February 1st. Obviously, the sites that we don't even have yet, we'll do kind of on a rolling basis, but we hope to engage folks around award decisions, before the end of the year, but so that we can work towards that February 1st start date on operations.
The next question is...
Can I clarify on that? This is Christina. If it's February 1st, if notifications happen, and then what's the timeline? Because I guess the question for me is, our organization's going to need to plan for floating cash, as we've done on some other host contracts.
our goal is to have the contracts executed for the dedicated sites that we have by February 1st.
The next question, is there capital funding available?
So not in this in this procurement. This is really about the operational dollars to operate the facilities and the programmatic dollars to provide the services in the facilities. And I should be clear that where a nonprofit partner is bringing their own, that our primary purpose in this is to have a queue of nonprofit partners who can operate the sites that the city brings to the table. As we have, the potential for the GO bond funding to acquire new hotels and motels, and we need to partner with a nonprofit provider for the services there. That's really the primary focus for this procurement. In the instances where a nonprofit partner is bringing their own site to the table and saying, we're really looking for the programmatic dollars to offer the case management and the services, we are primarily looking at being able to fund those programmatic expenses at those sites versus all of the operational expenses that might go along with that site. Just as a point of clarification.
So, sorry, since that was my question, is it, so if there's current space to turn into non-congregate shelter with, having to make some adjustments or retrofit or any of those kinds of things, that those capital dollars to be able to do it can't be part of this request?
Correct.
And then you're saying that the primary thing is for people who will apply to do it in city-owned facilities, so that it's less important for us to be able to do it in our own facilities?
Not less important. We are excited for any nonprofit partner providing shelter services. It is the primary purpose for this solicitation that we have a queue of city-owned and leased sites that the city is looking for an operational partner for. That's our top priority, is making sure that the sites that we've identified and paid for or have in the queue have a partner so that they can be utilized for non-congregate shelter. The city is also seeking, if there are other innovative ideas or ways that partners are looking to bring more non-congregate shelter online, and they're just looking for that programmatic support or a little bit of funding to help make that possible, then we want to also use this procurement as a way to receive those proposals. So I don't want to communicate that it's not important, but just in terms of what we know we really need to walk away from with this is some operating partners for the sites that we own and lease, and anything else we get above and beyond that would be exciting and extra.
And then would a non-city owned hotel currently operated as non-congregate shelter be eligible for funding?
So I might need to come back to that one in the official Q&A document. I think in general, our spirit of this is to try and bring new non-congregate shelter into the system. So looking at sites or partnering with a nonprofit who has a non-city owned hotel not currently operated as non-congregate shelter, who says we'd like to bring this into the shelter system. So let me do a little more thinking on that and get an official Q&A response for you there, Theo.
And what is the anticipated term of the agreement?
So
I
for, go ahead, Jeff.
I think we note that in the solicitation that the city may award contracts anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So that would be all part of the negotiations once the award is made.
Okay. I'm going to read Heather's question backwards. So page 16 under shelter operations, the last bullet point states that we will provide assistance with ADLs, that we being the provider. She's asking for more clarification on what's expected here, as this is a big ask, especially at a site that isn't even remotely ADA accessible.
And Angie, do you want me to read it? Bullet or?
Sure.
So the bullet says operational support for accessibility of services to guests with disabilities, such as on-call or integrated support for guests needing assistance with activities of daily living. ADL activities include assistance with personal hygiene, walking, organizing belongings, etc.
So I guess my question, so at Roadway, we actually don't take folks who cannot perform their own ADLs because it's not an ADA accessible site. And so would this be an expectation moving forward?
I think in general, we'd like to see included in proposals how agencies would propose to support folks who need some assistance with their activities of daily living, whether through partnership with personal care provision on site, agencies that come on site through Medicaid funding, or if it's a line item of the contract. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the full range of wheelchair accessibility is one piece, but assistance with activities of daily living could apply to folks who don't have mobility issues. So while we note that there are some facilities that are not as wheelchair accessible, there are still folks who may need support with their activities of daily living that could receive that support in a non-congregate environment. So just looking for within your proposal how you either seek to provide that, or if you feel like this program and setting can't accommodate those things, an explanation of why. That would be sort of what we'd be looking for there.
And
Thanks
then
for clarifying.
This goes hand in hand with Kristen's question about what level of ADA support is required on site. Can it be made available to a limited number of people on site to allow for simplified contracting with a partner? So wanting to make sure, Kristen, you feel like that's been answered with Angie's response.
I think so. My thought around that is if we were to say 10, we would be able to provide ADL support for 10 people on a site and provide that cap. Otherwise, you could end up saying, we would have to provide it to everybody, and there's no financial way that we'd be able to even estimate budget for that. So that's my thinking.
Right. Yeah, I think that type of approach makes sense. I mean, certainly if someone's like, we have a great partnership with this home health provider and they would come in, whatever, you can propose that. But similar in our thinking, a lot of hotels and motels, right, they have a certain number of units that are designated as wheelchair accessible or ADA rooms. Is there a certain number of units that could be designated for folks with higher level of support needs? Things like that. So without getting too prescriptive to a program's model, I think it would be acceptable for you to make your estimates based on a proportion of the rooms being towards a higher level of service need.
And then I think there's a couple questions about this, but will the city maintenance team be providing any support to non-congregate shelter sites, since the RFP mentions basic maintenance support?
Yes. So the sites that the city is bringing to the table, those 3 sites that are currently identified, and then any new or additional sites that that come online from the city side. There will be a joint partnership around maintenance for those properties. So we'll have our city maintenance team providing the really more of the structural issues and repairs needed. But want to make it clear that an operating partner would be the one providing the day-to-day basic maintenance. So, you know, we wouldn't call the city maintenance team out for minor janitorial items, for instance. And I know Katie Spritzer is on, as well as Jillian Lubenow. I don't know if either of you from the real estate team would want to offer more about that delineation of basic maintenance expected by the contracted partner and what the city's real maintenance team provides.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. First of all, just to say that we're flexible in looking at situation by situation, but in past agreements, we have the shelter operator has provided security coverage. They've done their own janitorial. They've done pest control, phone lines, Wi-Fi, laundry, some snow removal, as well as parking management if there's a parking lot that needs to be managed. Does that answer your question?
We'll work in the Q&A and getting that lined out more specifically of which pieces would the city's team look to cover in relation to the city owned or supported sites, and then in general, which things would we look for a partner to budget for and to plan to do. But yeah, Heather, does that help?
Yeah, thank you. It's really helpful.
Kristen had a related question too that said, can we get a definition of basic support maintenance? For example, does the replacement of a broken microwave fall under basic maintenance support?
Yes, we'll follow up in the Q&A. So yes, we can further define that. And we'll follow up in the written Q&A.
The next question, is the city willing to consider joint or multi-agency proposals for the provision of shelter operations and programs? And if yes, is the city open to separate contracts with the agencies submitting a joint proposal, or would the city only consider a single award with a lead agency and subgrantees?
We love collaborations and we love collaborative efforts. I am going to need Jeff and or our person from DIDO to speak to Zinjin or BidNet, how that works with a lead proposer versus a collaborative proposal.
Yeah. I mean, I can speak to one project that we have going on right now where there's two nonprofits that are working collaboratively together. So in that case, there's one contract with one of the entities, and then the other is a subcontractor of the first. So, I mean, I guess we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, based on the proposal. So, but typically there'd be a sub to those types of projects.
And so Julia, just so I'm understanding the question, it's sounding like, is there a desire to potentially, like, let's say there's one hotel and two nonprofits partnering on it. The idea would be that both of those nonprofits have their own distinct contract with host for their own distinct pieces, versus a lead applicant and a subcontract through that lead applicant.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Angie. And just if we are allowed to submit a proposal in that way, should we submit that as a single proposal or two related proposals?
Okay. We'll follow up on that in the Q&A about the preferred way to handle that after talking it through with the contract folks a little bit.
Are folks able to get a list of items that indirect rate of 10% cannot be charged? I think we're asking what can be covered under the indirect rate and what cannot. There have been some unforeseen nuisances on past contracts. Nuances, I'm sure.
Thanks, Midori. I'm trying to type on my phone because my computer is not working for the chat function or anything. So, so just to clarify, what I'm trying to say is there have been some on the direct costs. There are certain pieces that for some contracts we are not able to charge that 10% indirect cost rate for, and some items that we can. And it seems to be based on funding or based on certain people who in the contracting department. I don't know, but it's sometimes a little confusing, and it would be really great to know what we're signing up for before we get started, rather than finding out later that we can't charge some things, even though there's still a cost that we're going to incur. So, I'm still charged that indirect cost rate for my program. So I just want to make sure I really understand what I'm getting into if we're to move forward with this proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. We can, Leslie, before I just commit to it, we have this list or the breakdown. I'm asking Leslie Domingo on our contract team that we would be able to provide some written breakdown of this as part of the Q&A.
We could go ahead and write out some formally, but it really typically is any sort of shared expense, admin, administrative costs, overhead costs, human resource costs are usually fall in that indirect category. General office supplies, general copier kind of type uses, general telephone lines, and kind of the overall internet. So anything that's going to be shared throughout offices or programs will go on that indirect. Sometimes we could do a portion if it's a direct service for the program and clientele that could fall in the direct, but it really is kind of, but we can provide a more defined list. There's still always going to be exceptions based, and you are right, Kirsten, based on the funding. Some of our federal, we're able to utilize your federal approve rate. For our local dollars, we're using the 10%. And a lot of times when we're using that federal indirect approval rate, there are certain guidelines that we have to follow of what is allowable or not allowable. And again, we could provide a definition for you in our formal response.
And yeah, recognizing that it's been challenging this year with some updated guidance from HUD regarding some of our HUD sources. So we are primarily looking at local and non-HUD sources for the funding of these programs. So hopefully that should simplify things greatly.
Next question is how much funding is available over the 3-year period?
I think this question goes along with a little bit the one Chris Callanan also asked directly below it. I don't have an overall, I don't have a specific answer for that. What we're seeking is for your proposals around what it would cost to operate these services within the facilities that we're seeking partners for. And, over a 3-year period, we would look to annualize, that cost each year. And so there's not a minimum award, there's not a maximum award that we have in mind. We're really seeking to understand, what's the scale of what can be leveraged across other funding sources that folks might bring to the table, or even to say, you know, this is the full cost of operations, and we would need support for all of that. But don't have that detail. In terms of financial sources, again, the primary source we're looking at this is in our homelessness resolution fund, which is the taxpayer local funding source. We may have a blend of some other funding sources, such as the general fund, but we're really primarily looking at local dollars for these operations.
And then next, after Chris's question, is the funding available with this RFP, the catalytic funding identified with the passage of 2B as outlined in the host budget presentations?
No, we have a forthcoming procurement related to the catalytic funding that will be in a soon future timeline.
And what is the timeline on the 2 other anticipated properties?
2 other, meaning not roadway. Mike, okay. Yeah, so we are still working to get under the purchase and sale agreement for the East Denver Stability Center, but are still in a hopeful time frame towards being able to operate that facility by February or March. The other facility is a little bit, there's still a few things that we're working on to understand the scale of needs in order to be able to get in and be operational at that site. But we're still looking towards that February, Q1 of 2022 timeframe. The only one with a sort of firm February 1 start would be operations at the roadway or West Denver Stability Center, looking to start a contract for February 1st there, as current operating contracts for that site expire on January 31st.
And the last question in the chat, can the city provide a template for the proposed sublease agreement for the roadway property? I think Jillian is on still.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think once a service provider has been identified, then we can go into a stage where we can negotiate lease terms. We haven't drafted leases for any of these 3 properties. We're gonna draft those as we after we select the provider.
Can I just ask, sort of related to that though, is there any opportunity to get a better sense of what kinds of obligations the city would be looking for in a sublease agreement? So even if we can't see an actual sample draft of the sublease, if we could have an understanding of what kinds of obligations or expectations might be included in that, it could have budgetary implications. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we can consider that and get back to you with an answer to that question.
Unless my chat did something funny, because it did tell me it was muted, I don't see any other questions in the chat. But we have a few more minutes if folks want to add or ask anything else.
Can I just ask out loud?
Yeah, I'll write it down.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to write it in the chat, which might look odd, but
No, I'll put it in the chat.
okay. We're timing you, Christina. Checking your words per minute. can you please synthesize and list all contract provisions related to contractor rights and assurances? Oh, that wasn't Christina, that was Chris.
I can respond to that. There's a sample agreement that's attached to the solicitation that has the terms and conditions.
And then Christina, she would like to understand the possible purchase of more builds.
So that didn't make sense. I meant to, I don't really understand that. So possible purchase of buildings is part of the RFP, like if we wanted to sell a building to the city, we could do that, and there's funding available for the city to buy a building from like a provider, or I'm not totally following that.
Yeah, let me try, and please let me know if there's still confusion here. So through this procurement, we're not seeking to buy any buildings through this procurement. This is really about the operational and programmatic support. We mentioned that the city may be purchasing or leasing additional buildings and bringing those into non-congregate shelter operations in the near future, you know, over the next 1 to 2 years as well. And so that's being handled through different processes, through our current request for interested parties, about folks who might be interested in selling their hotels or motels. And then as we align the funding from local, state, and federal sources to acquire those buildings, we're making decisions about proposed use of those buildings. Is it an immediate conversion to affordable housing? Is it about a rehab for permanent supportive housing? Is it a short-term operation as non-congregate shelter with a look towards long-term conversion to housing? So that's what we're looking to do with those additional buildings that the city is hoping to acquire. But there's not a desire through this procurement to purchase buildings from nonprofit partners or for-profit partners for that matter. Does that answer?
Kind of. I mean, I guess we'll go back when all of this stuff, it seemed, I thought that was the second part when you talked about the 3 priorities, the city operating city properties that you're looking for hotels, motels to buy, and then transitions into non-congregate shelters. So that was why I wasn't understanding, because that second piece sounded like purchase. But if that's not right, okay, but then if there are, like, if the city's looking to purchase stuff, that's a different department, because.
Yeah, it's the Department of Real Estate that does the purchase and sale agreements. And so Host is looking to purchase more buildings, but this procurement is not the mechanism through which we intend to do that. This is the mechanism through which we gain partnership for the operation of shelter within those buildings.
Okay.
And just to clarify, Angie, as part of this proposal, we are seeking proposals from entities that have documented site access to non-congregate rooms such as apartment buildings, boarding houses, hotels, and so forth. So, so if a proposer has site access to an existing location that's could be considered non-congregate, a proposal would be accepted for that type of scenario.
Yes. I see Kristen's question about, are we looking to maximize occupancy? We will consider the proposed capacity of a program operation as part of the proposal. Some folks have clear reasons in their program design of why they really need it to be single occupancy. I think we found success in some of our programs providing at least some rooms with double occupancy. And so if a room has 2 beds and we're able to put 2 unrelated adults in that room, I think that that would be a great win. We're really looking to expand the capacity of our shelters with this new program, with this procurement. And so would love to see proposals that speak to double occupancy and that are staffed for that. Noting that there will always be need for some rooms with single occupancy, and open to understanding people's reasoning either way.
Last question, how are we defining non-congregate?
So I think we get into some of that definition in the procurement language itself, but essentially, does it have a room or a door that closes that person has their own access to a private space for sleeping, and then there are shared spaces for other common activities.
So single rooms?
It could be rooms with roommates, like I was just talking about, you know, if there's multiple beds in a room, but the idea is that it's not dormitory style, you know, large rooms with multiple bunks, and, you know, dozens of unrelated adults in the same large room. It's really about individualized sleeping areas. We'll work on if that's not clarified in the procurement language. We'll work on laying out some common characteristics there to support a definition. Right.
So I want to be respectful of everybody's time, and we're right at 10 o'clock. I just want to remind everybody, if you have additional questions, that you can submit those to me via email, Jeff Stawicki, and we will flush those out internally and post them as an addendum to the web portal. So with that, thank you everybody for participating today. It's great to see such a great turnout. And it's obvious that you guys are all kind of thinking about this and what it might look like. So we really appreciate your efforts and look forward to seeing your proposals. So thank you so much for participating today.